If you're looking to build a gaming PC but aren't sure quite which parts to pick, I've got just the video for you, as in this one I'll be going through the best builds you can assemble right now for a range of different budgets. From a super budget $750 build through to a $1,000, $1,500 and $2,000 system. This video hopefully has a PC build for everyone. Let's do this. The MSI 342C QD OLED is an epic 34-inch ultra-wide monitor with a 3440 by 1440 resolution, 1800R curvature, 175Hz refresh rate, and low 0.03 millisecond response time. Learn more about this stunning quantum dot OLED panel at the first link below. I'm going to be using Newegg to pick the parts out for this video. They've not sponsored it, but they give a great idea of up-to-date pricing and availability for components. Plus, if you're willing to shop around, it means you can potentially save yourself even more money. Now, obviously in the last few weeks, there's been loads of brand new GPU launches. From the new 40 series super GPUs to new cards from AMD too, there are more options than ever. But let's start off, shall we, with our super budget system first of all. I always like to start by choosing the CPU and GPU combo. This should make up about 50% of the build, and from here, the rest of the parts are easy to pick. If we have money left over, we can put a better CPU or GPU in, and equally, if we've gone over budget, we can drop it down a little bit later. Now, $750, so we want to spend about $400 or so on the CPU and GPU. Processors-wise, I'm thinking there's a couple of options. We've either got Intel's i5-13400F, but that's way more expensive than I thought it was going to be. So I think we're going to have to go for last gen Ryzen, something like the Ryzen 5 5600X. This is coming in at about $160, which is basically where we probably want it to be. So let's go ahead and add that to the cart. As far as GPU goes, that gives us around about $250 to $300 to spend on a graphics card. And I'm kind of intrigued to see, if we go over to components, then down to GPUs and video cards, what the best selling options are within this price range. This is going to give me a great idea as to what you guys are actually buying. And unsurprisingly, a lot of you are buying RTX 3060s. Because of the 12 gigs of VRAM, it's potentially more attractive than the 4060, which obviously had really terrible reviews, and it comes in at sub $300. The Intel Arc A750 also raised its head for just $199, but the drivers and software optimizations are just not quite good enough yet. Instead though, I think I'm going to opt for the AMD RX 7600. Now yes, it only has 8 gigs of video memory, which isn't quite as good for 1440p gaming, but this is aimed at 1080p as a build generally, and at $259, but with another $10 off with the promo code, it's going to help us to really keep under budget for the build so far. Now from here, we've got of course our graphics card and CPU, and this will easily lead us onto other parts like the motherboard and RAM. Because we've got a Ryzen 5 5600X, we obviously need to pick up a B550 motherboard, so that's the next stage of the build. As far as B550 motherboards go, there are a lot of options, but again, I'd like to see what the best selling ones are, and this ASRock B550M Pro 4 jumps out at me straight away. We used a B550M board from ASRock in a build recently, a bare bones design like this, and had some great results. And while it's not going to give you loads of overclocking and your connectivity certainly more constrained, we only have one USB-C and one next-gen 10 gig USB Type A, but it's going to be totally fine, and at this kind of price point, we do need to make a couple of compromises. As far as RAM goes, 16 or 32 gigs is where I'm looking. I'd like to try and get 32 gigabytes of DDR4 for this build. No DDR5, of course, because we've obviously gone for a B550 motherboard. We do want to make sure the speeds are right, so I think we need a 3600 megahertz kit for this build. Corsair's Vengeance RGB Pro is a lovely kit of RAM, but at $85, I think we can probably save ourselves some money. And while this G-Skills Rituals V is nowhere near as good looking, at $65, that's $20 we can spend elsewhere. After a quick look around, I think this is basically as cheap as we're going to get, so let's add that into the cart. Now, storage-wise, this is really easy. Any build, we want to make sure we have an NVMe drive. Gen 3 or preferably Gen 4. They've got so cheap nowadays, it just makes sense. I really like the Crucial P3 Plus in our testing. It's a great drive that offers great value for money. The 500 gig drive is really cheap, but this 1 terabyte comes in at just $64. You're going to get read and write speeds in the region of 5 gigabytes per second on those reads, 4.2 on the writes, and it just makes so much sense for this build. It is back ordered for like 2 more days, so you have to be a little bit patient, but once it's back in stock, this is easily the best choice for the money. All that leaves us to buy is the case, PSU, and if we want one, a CPU cooler. We don't necessarily need one, as the Ryzen 5 5600X comes with one included in the box. Case-wise, we want to go for something micro ATX. We don't want something too large because our motherboard's simply going to look out of place, and of course we don't want to spend too much money. So let's again sort by best selling, but let's set our maximum price filter up to around about $75. There's no need to spend any more than that. Looking at the options, and and yeah, there's a few I'm not so sure about here. The Q300L from Cooler Master's nice, but it is very basic, and I think we can probably do a little bit better. The MONTECH Air 903 Max is an absolute bargain, but it's huge. It's absolutely massive. It supports E80X motherboards, and we definitely don't need that. One case I do quite like, though, is the MONTECH Air 100. This is the ARGB version, so you get all the extra fans. By the looks of it, 4 120mm fans included. I really can't knock that. 4-star reviews, $60, what's not to love? All we then left to pick up is the power supply, and it looks like $716 so far. We might go slightly over budget. Let's see how close we can get to that $750 mark. PSU-wise, we don't need anything more than a 650-watt power supply, because obviously the RX 7600 really doesn't have a hefty power requirement. Corsair CX650M comes in at $69, or we can get something like the MSI A650BN for $10 less. Thermaltake Smart range is also pretty good. I like the BM3, but not at that price point. And to be honest with you, I think it's a pick between the Corsair and the MSI. The MSI is going to be totally fine, but the Corsair one is modular. So if you want the extra cable management bonus that the Corsair one provides, count for the extra $10 you'll need to pick that up. Now this is pretty unbelievable. With the combo savings and the promo code, we're at $751.92. So if you're looking to build a really fantastic build for $750, these are the parts I'd pick up. But what if you've got more money to spend? What if you want to spend about $1,000? Let's see where we land this time around. For this $1,000 build, I've kicked things off with our CPU, motherboard, and kept the SSD the same. I've notched up to the i5-12400F. This comes in at $148, which is about $70 less than the closest Ryzen option, the Ryzen 5 7600, and less by about $50 than the 13400F. I've combined that up with an ASRock B660M Pro motherboard. Great choice for just $94. And of course kept our NVMe drive the same. Now, I obviously need some DDR4 or DDR5 memory. By the looks of things, this is a DDR4 motherboard, and that's further going to save us a little bit of cash. What I would like to do though with this build is make it look a bit better than the $750 system that we just used. And something like RGB memory, while a little bit of a splurge, is going to help us to achieve that. I love the way the Vengeance RGB Pro looks, so let's add that to cart. This is going to save us around about $20 or $30 compared to DDR5. If you'd prefer to be on that next gen memory and you think you might upgrade your system regularly, I would recommend that out the door. But DDR4 for most people is going to be totally fine. That takes us up to $393. Unusually, I'm going to grab a good case, a good cooler, and a good power supply, and then see exactly how much money's left for the GPU at the end. As far as cooler goes, I've had some great experiences with Deepcool's AK400. It consistently remains one of the cheapest air coolers on the market. It's going to give us way better temps, prevent thermal throttling over something like a stock cooler, and it's a lot quieter. It's available in black for $35 with a $5 off code, or in a white colorway, which I think looks absolutely amazing. This build isn't a white theme build though, so I'm going to go for the black one and add that into the cart. As far as power supply goes, I'd like to future-proof this build a little bit, so a 750 watt unit I think makes the most sense. Corsair RM750 at $99 is a great deal, but I think we can go a little bit cheaper. Thermaltake's Tough Power GFA3 comes in at $89, and their GF1 comes in at $79, so it's getting cheaper, and they're both really solid units. But can we get any more money off? Yes, here we go. Smart BM3. I sound like a broken record. We've used this in so many videos. Check them out. Link down below. Just such a good power supply. It's got the ATX3 standard. It's got the Gen 5 power connector. You can see that just here. It's going to work absolutely fantastically for this system. Let's add that in. That's another $70 in the bag, and we need to find ourselves a case as well. Case-wise, I'm a little bit unsure, I think, as to what to go for. For under $100, we're a little bit light on options, but I have noticed this Cougar DuoFace, which we've reviewed. You can check it out in the cards now. Really liked. And at $89, it's actually kind of a great deal. You get a replaceable front panel, so you can have glass or mesh, and it all comes in the box, with 4 ARGB fans as standard. So I think for now, maybe a little bit large, but I think that's going to work pretty well. That takes us up to just shy of $600. Got the motherboard, PSU, CPU, SSD, RAM, cooler, and the case. So unless I've got my maths wrong, all that remains is the graphics card. I think we're in a pretty good spot. So we've got exactly $422.08 to play with. Now, thinking about it, 7700 XT, could that fit in the budget for $420 or so? I don't think it's going to. The cheapest 7700 XT we can find is this Sapphire card. We've actually used this card, think it's fantastic, at $449. This is going to give you top tier 1440p performance, and has come down a lot in price recently. I saw one a couple of weeks ago for as low as $429, so it's kind of a shame this isn't on a slightly better deal right now, but I think this card is so price competitive that AMD know they don't exactly have to give it away. Let's add it to cart, see where we land with the actual cart, and see how over budget we are. Now, we are $27 $7 over budget, but I'm going to say go for it. The other option would be something like a 7600, the new XT with the extra VRAM, but you're going to save yourself $100 and lose a lot of performance. The other option at $449, I suppose, would be something like an RTX 4070. That now retails for $499, but I don't know if there's anything maybe that's going to come in a little bit cheaper. Let's see what the lowest price 4070 is. 534, we're miles out. 7700 XT makes a lot of sense. To summarize then, for a $1,000 build, you want to grab yourself an Intel Core i5-12400F with an ASRock B660 motherboard, 7700 XT, 750 watt power supply, a 12400F, a P3 Plus, a 32 gig kit of memory, and of course our AK400 and Cougar DuoFace Pro. Links to everything today will be linked down below. Now, if you want to spend more money, let's say $1,500, we're going to start from scratch again. I think this build is a little bit too basic to really saturate that higher price point. And this time, we're going to start with the GPU. And that's because NVIDIA have obviously released their new Super cards, and they're actually quite good. The 4070 Super comes in at the same price as the original 4070, but gives you more performance, about 15% more performance, actually, which is great to see. The 70 Ti is going to be, I think, out of budget for a $1,500 build. And though it's proved to be impressive, it's not impressive enough that I want to make sacrifices elsewhere. Now, as far as the RTX 4070 Super goes, I'm interested to see how these line up price-wise. We reviewed the Asus dual card and thought it was pretty good, so that's a good option. But MSI have got a 2-fan Ventus for just $549. That could be potentially a great option for this $1,500 build, but I really don't want to discount AMD's RX 7800 XT, and that's because they've been so price competitive with these cards as of late. This GeekaWhat one, we reviewed it, thing's fantastic. You can get now for under $500 with Avatar, if you fancy having Avatar, as a free add-on, and with the extra VRAM over the 4070 Super, it just makes a lot of sense. CPU-wise, I'm going to go 7600X AMD Ryzen. That's going to give us better value for money than something like the Intel Core i5-14600K, which is a lot more expensive. And at just $229 right now, this thing is an absolute bargain. While I'm here, a good B650 motherboard will do. This one has Wi-Fi and a really, really nice design. Love this Aorus Elite AX version. 32 gigs of DDR5 memory for under $100 is also going to work quite well. I think I might stick with our crucial P3 Plus, but maybe push the boat out. Do we want to spend 124, 65? I'll leave that up to you. I'll link both below. 1 terabyte, I think, is going to be more than adequate for this system. While Thermaltake Smart BM3 750 also makes a lot of sense. If it ain't broke, there's no need to fix it. I do want to put an all-in-one liquid cooler in for this build though, just to keep a lid on the temps of our 7600X and give us a bit of overclocking. But I don't want to spend like, whoa, Corsair IQ Link $250. Corsair, what are you on? It's so expensive. Let's see what the best selling coolers are though at this break. Let's go lowest price actually and see if there's any nice little finds we can get that aren't going to break the bank. We want something decent. We don't want something crap. I'm happy to spend a little bit of money, but I don't want to spend too much. This is what I'm looking for. Deepcool LS 520 SE is a great cooler. We've used this, really impressed with it, and at $82, it's not going to break the bank either. Now, looking at our basket, we're at $1,246, and I think we basically have all of the components apart from the case. And I couldn't look much further than MONTECH's new King 95, which has taken the internet by storm. People love it. You can check out our build. In the cards now, we use this case. Now, personally, I'd buy the King 95 Pro, as you get a whopping 6 RGB fans included for the price. So although it's a bit expensive, you get a lot for your money. To try and keep a lid on the budget, I'm going to go for the non-pro version. I would recommend you spend the extra $40 if you have it, or if you haven't got existing RGB fans, you can pop in for yourself. You can read our review of this case as well. Really, really big fan of the King 95 MONTECH case. Now, with that, we're sitting at $1,355. We're a whopping $150 under budget. So our 7800 XT, that's going to go, and we can have a look at some alternative GPU options instead. The first place I would look is something like an RTX 4070 Ti Super. Now, the 4070 Ti Super is apparently bundled with keyboards on Newegg. I'm not really sure what's going on. You can get the non-super version for about $750, which is going to push us over budget. The super version is going to sit more at that $799 MSRP. One area, though, I have seen some really great deals as of late is the 7900 XT. We made a short recently about how good value this card is right now, and if I show you what I mean, you're going to be astonished. So $739 for the ASRock gaming one here, but if you get it in white, which isn't for everybody, you get an extra $20 off. I mean, that makes total sense. I think it's going going to push us over budget a little bit, to be honest with you, where we sit in 1575, and the CPU, GPU situation, the process definitely could be better for the 7900 XT. But at just $75 over budget, the 7900 XT is a fantastic choice. Better value than the Nvidia competition, and a really, really solid design overall. If you wanted to keep firmly within that $1,500 budget, pop the case up to the King 95 Pro with those RGB fans, and drop the card back down to a 7800 XT. Use the extra money for some cable extensions or a new screwdriver. I don't sell my own. This one cost me about $5, but you get the point. It's going to give you money for your OS and anything that you might want to buy on top. Now, finally, $2,000. Where would I go if I had that little bit extra money to spend? And there's a few key changes I'm going to make to this config that gets us to that $2,000 price point and actually gives you great value for money. The first is that the CPU has got to go. Instead, I'd pop in the 7800X3D, best gaming CPU you can buy right now, and with 8 cores, 16 threads, this thing's a monster. So much cash, you really can't go wrong. No need to upgrade the motherboard, as this is already solid and you can't overclock the 7800X3D really anyway. Case, I'm going to put the Pro version in. I think that it makes sense just to make sure that you guys can actually build a system like this for that $2,000 price point. And I think we need an SSD, a CPU cooler, and a power supply upgrade. Nothing that's going to waste loads of money, but something that's just going to give us that bit more quality. 360mm AIO, as the 7800X3D does run pretty hot. One of the best selling items right now that aren't going to cost us an absolute fortune. Entered XT, like smashing it, but we are not spending that kind of money. So let's set a price limit at $150. I really believe we don't need to spend more than that. And again, deep cool rear there head, the larger version of the 520, the 720's in stock here for just $99. It's not the best AIO in the world, but it is going to do a pretty good job. I would like to get an 850 watt PSU just to make sure we've got enough wattage for our 7900 XT, and especially because we've got a more powerful CPU in this build as well. Again, Thermaltake, they just can't get enough. This one is a better power supply though. $94, but another $5 off, 80 plus gold, and yes, we've got that Gen 5 power connector and ATX3 compatibility. Thermaltake have got a bit of a PSU monopoly, I think, in this build, it transpires. And of course, we want a slightly better SSD. I'm thinking something like the Samsung 990 Pro. The 2TB one comes in at $179. 1TB 124. This is a bit more expensive than I'd hoped they were going to be. So let's instead see what other Gen 4 NVMe's they've got. I like Samsung drives. They always serve me pretty well, but I feel like we probably don't need to spend quite that much money. This is a bit more like it. We've got the WD Black SN850X, great drive. 1TB comes in at $90, 2TB at $144. So I think that's a little bit more of a sensible buy. I am going to add the 2TB one into the basket. Now, you may want to save the money, you may not want this extra capacity, but games are big nowadays, and I don't want to recommend a build where you've got no room to basically install anything. Now, what that's going to do is leave us with around about another $120 to spend on the GPU. So that gives us about $850 in total. If we head over to components, graphics cards, set our max budget at, let's call it 850. Yeah, 850, hit apply, and then sort by price, high to low, and see what we can squeeze in. For some reason, there's a 4060 Ti. You definitely don't want one of those. 7900 XT comes up again. I'm wondering if we can maybe squeeze a 7900 XTX, and I think we're just going to be slightly over budget. No, the normal XT version is about as good as we're going to get. The other option is a 4070 Ti Super, but in all honesty, I think I might stick with the 7900 XT and see where we hit with our $2,000 system, $1,902. The takeaways from this video then is that AMD seem to be killing it on GPU value right now. Between the 7900 XT, the 7800 XT, and even the 7600 XT, they seem to kind of have the market pretty sewn up. What do you guys think of these builds though? You can check out latest pricing and availability at the first links below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.